Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Okay, as we're coming in, you're going to start seeing in about a minute today's assignment pop up. It is dealing with using what we learned in yesterday's classwork assignment. I had several people that did not submit that assignment. It was the classwork. So for those people that did not submit the assignment on time, that's going to be a late assignment and you'll have points deducted. Hopefully you'll take care of that so that you can not have a missing assignment. Okay, so if you turned it in yesterday by 8 o'clock, you can look at yesterday's classwork assignment. Remember that first part we used Desmos on, and the Desmos we used to find the answers, and we used those answers to answer some questions. So that was graded for accuracy. I looked to see that you had the correct answers and that you answered the questions reasonably. So look over that, and if you have questions, send me a chat message. Let me know so that we can get together and go over anything you have questions on. But I circled in red any incorrect answers, and we're going to use that today to kind of jump off with figuring out the rules for multiplying integers. I appreciate my friends that have their cameras on. I hope that I have more people join as far as being able to see you in person. So people are joining us. Reminder that if you try to join class and I'm not admitting you at the time that you've tried to join, make sure that you have your first and last name. If I don't recognize your name or it does not look familiar to me, I will not admit you. And we've been doing this long enough, you guys know what to do. We don't want anybody coming in that's a little bit crazy. Not welcome in our class. So I've got one person that tried, name looked a little crazy, and I guess they got tired of waiting and they left, which is good. And then somebody else is still sitting there. I don't know who they are. And that's not going to happen here. So I'm really careful about who gets admitted to class. So if you're ever sitting there, just double check your name and say, is Ms. Tarnasky going to know it's me? Because if I don't know it's you, I'm not going to let you in. Good morning, guys. Okay, so we are going to use our interactive notebooks. Okay, we're going to turn to page, and you're going to need a highlighter and a pencil. I'm going to share this in a second. Go to page 73. So I'm going to share my screen. I hope. There we go. Let me pull this out. Okay, highlighter, pencil, and your interactive notebook. Yes, Miss Trano did tell me it was a pretty eventful morning in language arts this morning. Sorry guys that happened, but we're going to try to make sure that doesn't happen in our class because we just have too much to do to be playing around like that. All right, so on page 73, okay, we're going to go through and look at why the things happened yesterday. I think some of you were a little bit surprised at the answers, and I think some of you put answers as far as what you thought they were supposed to be instead of looking at the answers you actually got. Okay, so multiplication is like repeated addition, okay? So, okay, repeated addition. Okay, this means that you are repeatedly adding groups of integers. So for example, if I have 5 times -2, to find the product, sorry guys, I'm trying to find the product, you must repeatedly add 5 groups of -2, okay? So this is the number of groups, and this is in each group, okay? So we have a number of groups, and in each group we have 2 negatives. So I'm going to start with the counters because I think that's easier to see. I am going to draw 2 negatives, and that's one group. Almost looks like eggs. One group of 2 negatives. Well, I have to have 5 of those, so I'm going to draw another one. Now I have 2 groups and another one. Now I have 3 groups and another one. Now I have 4 groups. 1, 2, 3, 4. I need to have 5 groups. So if I use the counters to count, I can see that I have 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 negatives. So 5 times -2 is going to be a -10. Okay. Now, if I use the number line to do the same thing, it's like we did with addition, except now we are going to always start at 0. Your starting point's always 0. So I'm going to start at 0, and I'm going to show a group of -2. So I start at 0 and I go to my first number. Okay. I'm going to end up with 5 arrows. Okay. So 1, 2. So that's 2 arrows. 1, 2. Okay, we have 3 arrows. 1, 2. We have 4 arrows. 1, 2. We have 5 arrows. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I have 5 groups or 5 arrows that are the same length. Each one is 2 negatives pointing to the left. Okay, the answer is where my last arrow ends at -10. So this shows -10, the number line shows -10. Please send me a question using chat if you don't understand something that I go over. Okay, and remember, this is the first one. We're going to do 2 more of these together. We're going to come back to this in a second because we want to do what we understand, which is a little bit easier first. Okay, so if I go to number 2, to find 2 times -4, to find the product, you must add 2 groups of -4. So I'm going to start with the counters. I'm going to draw a group of -4. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's one group. I'm going to draw another group of -4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So I have two groups of -4. If I count and put them all together, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, the answer would be -8. I'm going to get the same thing on the number line. Remember, on the number line, you always start at 0. You go to your first number. We want to do 1, -4. So I'm going to draw that arrow. But I have to have two groups of them. So I'm going to make another -4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So I have 1, 2 groups of -4 is going to give me -8 that way. Okay, so far, so good, hopefully. All right, for number 3, I have 3 times -5. Okay, and so for this, we are going to draw 3 groups of -5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's one group. Draw another group. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then the last group. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So if I go back and I count all of those together, 5, 10, 15 negatives, 3 times -5 is -15. All right, now, if I go back, oh, I forgot. To find the product, you must repeatedly add 3 groups of -5. Okay, on the number line, same thing again. We're starting at 0. We're going to go to -5. Okay, and now we're going to put another -5. So I'm going to count that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so this is one group, 2 groups, 3 groups. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I end up at -15. Okay, any questions about modeling the counters and the number line? Okay, so with this, you have how many groups you have, and those are ones we can count. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Okay, the positive are groups that you count. Well, what happens if you have a negative times a negative? Okay, that's going to be a little bit more difficult to understand. So we're going to start with what we know. -5 times a -2 is, let's start with what we know of 5 times 2. So I'm back at the top, and 5 times 2 is 10. Okay, we know that 5 times -2, because of what we did here, is -10. So notice what happened when you have a positive and you multiply by a negative, it changes the answer here from a positive to a negative. But what if we have a -5 times a -2? If this is -10 because of this one negative, it's going to change that answer to the opposite. So the opposite of -10 is +10. Jamal, you with me? You writing this down, dear? Make sure you're writing in your notes. Okay? Make sure you're writing this in your notes. So -5 times -2 is a +10. And we understand that because of starting with what we know these two things. And so by default, we know here that if this is a negative, if I change one of the signs, my answer is going to become the opposite of what it was. Okay? All right, so same thing here. If we come down and multiplying, we have, with what we know, +2 times +4 is a +8. We know from our model that +2 times -4 is a -8. So what happens is that negative changed that positive answer to a negative. But now if they're both negative, they kind of cancel each other out. A negative times a negative, it's going to change that negative to a positive. So -2 times -4 is a +8. Okay, so -2 times -4 is a +8. All right, for this last one, -3 times -5. Okay, so for this, again, we know the answer is going to be what, which is kind of weird. A negative times a negative is going to make a positive. Okay, and we know that because +3 times +5 is 15. We know from the model that +3 times -5 is -15. And so if I change that positive to a negative, it's going to change my answer to the opposite. Instead of being -15, it's going to be +15. Okay, now we're going to look at some notes and how to remember this. Dakota, do you have a question? Okay, just checking. If you have questions, please, please, please ask. We're going to now go to page 74. And on page 74, we are going to put an X on them. Okay, we're not going to do page 74. So I want you to put an X on it so that you don't look back and think, huh, was I supposed to do this? We're not going to do this page. We're going to go on to page 75. Okay, a highlighter is going to be helpful because we're going to highlight some of the things that we see as far as patterns. So I'm going to need you to get ready with your chat boxes. So get your fingers ready for typing, okay? And I'm looking for answers to share with the class. I'm looking for some good answers on this. Okay, you need your eyes sharp and you need to look at the example. So we're going to look at these 3 equations. They're equations because they have the equal sign. I have 3 equations. I want to know, type in the chat box some pattern that you see that is the same for all 3 equations. And I'm going to need your help. I can't do this by myself. So I'm looking for your answer to that. Ah, okay. So they all say they are all 0. Answer is 0. I like that, Jasmine Jones. They have an answer. Good job, Alexander. They have an answer. It equals 0. We talked yesterday about what answers are in multiplication. So instead of saying answer, who can tell me the word we're going to use instead? If it's an answer for multiplication, it is a
product.
Answers is going to be, there we go, product. So we're going to put the pattern that we see is that all products in parentheses, we're talking about answers, equal 0, okay? And we're going to highlight that because we can see that they all equal 0. All right, here's my question. Why do they all equal 0? What is it that all of these have in common that give them that product of 0? There's something else. Raise up. The chat box, tell me in the chat box what you notice. What do you notice? They all have what in common? Somebody, good job, Heavenly. I see that. Jasmine Jones, you're on the right track. Absolutely. We're multiplying by 0. Something times 0. So actually, I think it was Heavenly gave me the right word I was looking for. Each expression has a factor. Remember, factor is a number that you multiply by, has a factor of 0. Okay, so on all of these, we have multiplication of 0 times 0 times 0. So that's why we get that answer of 0. That is a property. That property is called the multiplicative. What a fancy word. It's an adjective for the kind of operation. So multiplicative property of 0. That says if you multiply by 0, you get 0, whether it's the first or second factor. This property illustrates any value multiplied by 0 is 0. All right, now that's easy. That was the multiplication tables you learned in 3rd grade, the easiest ones, right? Anything times 0, you get 0. Well, let's look at the next 3 equations. I want to know, chat for me, what do you see that those 3 equations have as far as a pattern? What do they all have in common? What can somebody come up with?
Negative.
Well, don't tell me. Type it. I see negative, but we need to be more specific. Somebody says that, oh, I see a couple of things. Okay, 1, they have parentheses. Absolutely. They all have parentheses. They have numbers, yes, but more specifically, they have the parentheses. But Heavenly, you're on the right track again. And Alexander, that's the second thing. So yes. So the first thing is they all have all products. Remember, which are answers, equal a negative. Okay, so notice on all of these, we have the negative part. Our answers all have the negatives. Not the number part is the same, but they all have a negative answer. Why is that? What do they all have in common as far as the factors? What do you notice about the factors for this? Chat me that answer. What do they all have in common as far as their factors? I need somebody to answer for me. What do they all have in common as far as their factors? Very good. Heavenly, you are on fire today. There's 2 things, okay? They have 1 positive factor and 1 negative factor. So all have 1 positive and 1 negative factor. Doesn't matter which one's in the front. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter if it's first or second, the negative or the positive. Okay, so the rule for this, the symbolic rule for this would be, if I have a positive times a negative, the answer is going to be negative. Or what if the negative comes first times a positive? It's still going to be a negative. Isaiah Jones, you filling in your notes, dear? Do you have your notes with you? Isaiah Jones, do you have your notebook with you? Okay, just making sure. Make sure you're filling it in. It's a good reference. All right, looking at the bottom. All right, 3 more equations. I want to know, what patterns do you notice? Be specific as far as your numbers. Chat to me. Be good communicators. Some people I'm surprised I haven't heard from this morning. Some of my best participators. What do you notice as far as a pattern? What do those have in common? Ah, I see. Jasmine, Lamar. Yes, very good, very good. So, Alexander, nice job. What patterns do you notice? All products. Talking about answers. Equal a positive. Okay, so they all have a positive answer here. What else do you notice? We see that the product is positive. What do you notice about the factors? What is true about the factors? They all have parentheses in them because this is showing multiplication. Okay, you're going to see we're going to start getting away from the signs and it just being the parentheses. You're going to see that more and more often. So what's true about all the factors? Okay, some are negative, some are positive, But what can we say about all of them? That both factors in each one are, it's either two negatives or two positives. So we can say that both, and in this case, two factors have the same sign. So notice if we have two factors, same sign, we're going to get a positive answer. Okay, so the symbols for that would be what we knew from third grade. A positive times a positive equals a positive. But also a negative times a negative equals a positive. Okay, now we're going to practice using those rules, and we're going to actually simplify those rules as well on page 76. So summing up the information, okay, it says generalizations. What generalizations have we made about multiplying integers? Let's sum up our rules for multiplying integers. If the signs are different, chat to me what kind of answer we're going to have. If I have different signs that I'm multiplying, what kind of answer am I going to get? Nice job, Lamar. Nice job, Dakota and Alexander. Okay, so when my signs are different, that would be like a positive times a negative, or a negative times a positive. When the signs are different, my answer is going to be negative. If the signs are the same, a positive times a positive, or a negative times a negative, my answer is going to be, chat me your answer for that. Good, 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 good. Some of you are using the symbols, some of you are writing the words. Nice job, guys. The answer is going to be a positive. Yesterday in Discovery, we used Desmos, and we used Desmos to actually discover what the rules were. Well, we don't get to use a calculator for any of this. It's important to know your multiplication tables. Now, good or bad, my students at school, they have a timed multiplication test every week. I can't do that with you guys because I can't get it back from you to grade. So I wish I had some way to have you all practice. Your multiplication tables, knowing them is very important, because on this part of the SOL test, which here we're still going to have the multiplication, this part you are not going to have a calculator for. So it's really important to make sure that you know what these rules are. Okay, you have to know the rules and remember them, and that's why we've modeled them on with the counters and the number line. So for number 1, negative 5 times positive 8. Chat me the answer. What's the answer of negative 5 times positive 8? Okay, your participation is from your chatting. So those of you that don't have your cameras on, you can show me that you're engaged in the lesson with your answers. Good job, Alana and Shaquan. Lamar, look at your number again. I see lots of right answers, but make sure you have for that negative 40. Okay, negative 5 times a positive 8 is negative 40. All right, let's look at number 2. Notice we have different signs, so our answer is negative. Negative 3 times negative 7. Chat me your answer for that. Negative 3 times negative 7. All right, I'm seeing lots of right answers for that. It is a positive because they have the same sign. A negative times a negative is a positive 21. And finally, for number 3, positive 10 times negative 8. Okay, your engagement is you showing me answers to my questions. Positive 10 times negative 8. I see lots and lots of right answers. The answer should be negative 80. All right, I want you to work on 4 through 9. You've got 1 minute before we go over these. So on your own, trying those so you can check your understanding. Guys, let's go over the answer. So chat me the answer. -6 times -11. Nice. Good job, good job. Make sure you watch the sign. Most of you have the correct answer because it's a negative times a negative. It should be a positive 66. Positive 66. All right, number 5. Chat me your answer. Nice, nice, nice. Seeing lots of right answers. Make sure you watch your signs, guys. The answer should be a negative times negative is a positive 18. All right, number 6. Chat me your answer. Nice, nice, nice. I see all right answers so far if you've sent it to me. Okay, the answer should be -48. All right, number 7. 0 times -11. Chat me your answer. Awesome. I see this. Is this number positive or negative? My answer, positive or negative? I see some people shaking their head. It's neither. Remember, 0 is neither positive or negative. Nice job, guys. But it is an integer. Okay, it's just not a positive or negative integer. It's neither. Okay, so it is an integer. How about number 8? Chat me your answer. Okay, got a couple of people who need to work on their times tables. We've got the right sign. It is definitely a negative, but 7 times 6 is 42. So it should be a -42. And finally, number 9. Nice, nice, nice. Good. No sign in front of that. It's a 0. All right, for this next part, we're using the substitution property. We worked on this before. Substitution is we're going to change the variable to a value. So we have A is -3, B is -4, C is 5. Okay, this you're also going to see on the homework, and you're going to have a number of text boxes. If there are 2 text boxes, you're putting something in each one. The first one is always going to be showing the substitution. So -11A means -11 times the value of A, which is -3. So -11 in parentheses, you can put the -3. And then -11 times -3 is going to be a positive 33. Okay, so on this kind of question on your homework, you're going to see the problem given. The second line, you're just going to substitute. The third line, you're going to put in the value. So for number 11, 9B. Okay, so 9 is going to stay the same. I'm multiplying that by B, which is -4. So 9 times -4, I have different signs. So I'm going to put a -36. Okay, and number 12, -2AB is going to be -2 times A is -3 times B is -4. Now, before we get a final answer, I want you to either put a positive sign or a negative sign in the chat box. What kind of answer are we going to get? Don't worry about the number part. Is my answer going to be positive or negative? Okay, I see almost everybody saying positive, and everybody has said positive. And I get why you're saying that, because it's all the same sign. But remember, with multiplication, you do 2 at a time. So the first thing I'm going to do, and for this, you're going to see 3 lines instead of 2. -2 times -3, and negatives times a negative is a +6. But now I have a new problem. Now I have +6 times -4. Is my answer going to be positive that everybody gets? It's not. It's going to be a negative. Notice when you have an odd number of negatives, whether it's one negative number, 3 negative numbers, your answer is going to be a negative. So you're going to get -24. Okay, it's not a positive. And I understand why you guys said that, because you're like, well, they're all the same. But you've got to remember that you have these make a positive, and then a positive times a negative is a negative. All right, I'm going to give you a minute to work on 13, 14, and 15 so that you can check your understanding. 13, 14, and 15. All right, so for number 13, -20b is going to be -20 times b is -4. Remember, a negative times a negative is a positive, and 20 times 4 is 80, so it's going to be +80. All right, -8c is going to be -8 times c is 5. A negative times a positive, different signs, is going to give you a -40. And finally, ABC, A is -3. B is -4, C is 5. Okay, this is actually not going to be a negative final answer, but positive, because -3 times -4 is 12. 12 times 5 is +60. Any questions on what we're doing? You've got to remember those rules. Now, if you will look in the classroom, I'm going to stop sharing this and look at what you have for homework. It's a homework assignment dealing just with what we went over in class. So now I'm going to share. Did it? Okay, so here we have, we're going to view the assignment. This is homework number 26, okay? So on your Google Slides, okay, you're gonna see 2 pages, okay? And it's also gonna have some information that we talked about from our notes. So as this comes up, a little slow. Okay, you've got 2 parts. So the first part is just filling in the blank with your answer. Let me make this bigger so you can see it. Okay, so don't forget your signs. You're going to fill in your signs. Notice here, whenever we're multiplying by 0, it's that property that we talked about. So use your notes to make sure that you identify the property correctly. Then on this, notice some have 2 text boxes, some have 3. If there are 3 text boxes, I'm looking for that information in all 3. Okay, for this one, write the number sentence that's represented by the model. So remember, this is going to help you with finding the value. So the models have been drawn. You're going to write the sentence that's represented, okay, to get your answer. So just like we did in class today with the counters and the number line. All right, any questions before we go? I'm going to stop this and make sure that if you have a question, I answer. Any questions about what you're doing for homework? Get that to me by 8 o'clock so I can send you an answer key. And you can have that to go over, and I'll have an idea of whether you guys understand what we're doing or not. Yay, very productive class. You guys did great. Those of you that are participating, those are my best students. Okay, Dakota, I don't have ETEH today. It's Tuesdays and Fridays, dear. But you can always send me an email if you have information. Heavenly, the quizzes, dear, it's going to be a while because the classwork that you did last night was important for me to get back so that you could have that to make sure you understood what we were doing. So the quizzes that you took, it takes me about 4 to 5 hours to grade those because I have to do each one individually. And I can't just, if they were paper, it'd be so easy. I just take my pen and mark on them. But instead, I have to make characters. I have to circle. What would help me to make that faster grading is if you all gave me all 100s. That'd be great. I can do it really fast. But when I have to make adjustments and changes and mark it, it takes me a long time. So I apologize, Heavenly. I'm not getting them back as fast as I'd like to. But if I don't get it back during the week, I'll definitely work on it Friday and get it back to you by over the weekend. Okay, any other questions? That was a good question. All right, my friends, so good to see you. Thank you for participating. Those of you that chatted with me, it helps me to understand whether you understand. Have a great Wednesday. I will see you tomorrow. Bye.